Welcome to Big Band Backstage, brought to you by CP Music Productions and produced at DHB Studios in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm your host, Laura Canoy. This podcast celebrates the music and the performers of today's big band scene while uncovering the unique stories behind its rich American heritage. CP Music Productions is part of the heartbeat of this movement, with two generations behind it, the father and son team of music director Clayton Skip Poole and his son, vocalist and business director CJ Poole. And today, our special guest is a man whose musical career spans decades, continents, and musical styles. Jerry Ascione is a composer, arranger, conductor, educator, and musician. For 3 decades, he played in US Navy bands, including the premier jazz ensemble, the Commodores, which he later led, writing arrangements for many jazz greats, with his pieces being performed by military bands around the world. Retiring from the Navy in 2008, Jerry became the pianist, chief composer, and arranger for the New England Wind Symphony and the Capitol Jazz Orchestra, both under the umbrella of CP Music Productions. He's been an artist in residence in Brazil, adjudicator for many jazz festivals, and now he's a professor of applied composition at Anne Arundel Community College in Maryland. Well, it is quite a background, and we're going to hear lots of amazing stories today. And so, Jerry Ascione, a huge welcome to Big Band Backstage. It is great to see you.
Laura, thank you so much. I am so happy that I was invited to be part of the show. Laura, Skip, everybody, thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And also with us, once again, is CP Music Productions music director Clayton Skip Poole. For 50 years, Skip Poole has led big bands and collaborated with world-class performers, including Jerry Ascione. And Skip, welcome back. Always good to be with you.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Well, and Skip, I'm actually going to start with you. How
Sure.
did you first connect with Jerry?
Well, it's funny, we were talking about this a while back, and it's been going on, it's been 16 years, going on 17 years, and actually it all started, those of folks that know me actually know me primarily as a big band person, but in the past many decades, I've also conducted symphony orchestras and wind bands, concert bands, and at the time, we were doing a holiday show for concert bands, but it was becoming a show that I wanted to do that wasn't necessarily music available that had been published that I could use. I wanted to do something different. And we had 2 vocalists, male and female vocalists, and ultimately, over the years, we've had all kinds of things, everything from bagpipes to you name it. Very unusual setting for a concert band. But to make a long story short, I realized that I was getting out of the realm of things that I could get hold of musically easily, and I knew that I needed an arranger or a composer involved. And believe it or not, I just went online and I put in what I was looking for, and through the magic of onlineness or whatever you call it, Jerry had a wonderful website, and up comes his website, and I'm listening to some of the stuff he had done. Things he had done, where he'd performed, what he did, his whole background. And I listened to snippets of things that he had composed and arranged. And I said, I really want to work with this guy. And so I reached out to Jerry. I can't remember initially if it was email or phone call, but eventually we wound up on the phone. And we got all the particulars squared away. And I told Jerry our first show together was with the concert band. It was just about 40 pieces. And he did an original piece which featured a female and male sort of operatic style singer with a concert band based on the Gift of the Magi, which is that whole thing about, I think it was 187 was the number of the piece that he did, and which is meaning the how many, I think it was, and Jerry can remember better than I, but it had to do with the amount of money that was available between the husband and the wife and what they accomplished and so forth. It's a great story, which I will not get into right now, be too deep. But anyway, that's how I met Jerry. And, he came over to my house, and when he arrived, and we went over things, met with the soloists, and we just knew instantly that it was going to be an ongoing situation. And ultimately, over the years, he's arranged so many things, from dectets to big bands to special shows to concert bands, So it's been, I guess you could say, an alter ego kind of thing going on where I just mention what I'm looking for, and Jerry goes to work, and we've got some great musical product from it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that collaboration. It is very special. So, what were some of those early collaborations, Skip, and how did they evolve over the years?
Well, the earliest stuff that we did, as I mentioned, was concert band driven. But there's always had a unique theme involved. So, as I mentioned, Gift of the Magi, or the story of Scrooge, and so forth. And there was always something involved in that regard. And given the theme, Jerry would work out the music that would go behind it, and we'd have several phone calls because Jerry being near Washington, and then back and forth, and we couldn't just meet in the next room. But we were on the phone quite a bit, and I would always just give him an idea of what I was looking for. But I would never say, I want to hear this and this and this and do this and that. Because with someone with Jerry's talent and creativity, I wanted him to run full gamut as to what he could do and not be restricted by anything that, a lowly music director would want to have. And ultimately, when you give someone that freedom that has that talent and ability, we have something very beautiful that is produced. So that's what we decided to do, and it's worked beautifully over the years.
So, full disclosure, Jerry, you and I have worked together on many pieces for the Capitol Jazz Orchestra's Holiday Pops concert. And in that role, Jerry, I've always known you as a composer, an arranger, and a pianist. But your first instrument, I have since learned, was the French horn. So what was your introduction to that instrument like, as well as your introduction to just the whole notion of you could be a professional musician?
Well, I started piano when I was 5, and we've probably talked about this, but when I started it, I hated it. I did not want to play the piano. I wanted to play center field for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and that's all there was to it. But that didn't exactly work out. So, I kept practicing, and there were a lot of things that I really enjoyed about it after a while. And my dad, who was a great clarinetist, said, well, you're going to start on trumpet also. And that was okay. And I did well. But then I was in 9th grade, 10th grade, and a friend of mine had this soundtrack for The Magnificent Seven. And I heard this French horn player. It was Vincent DeRosa, the legendary French horn studio musician. And I thought, that's what I want to play. I love that sound. And so there was an opportunity to switch over, and I did. I think I was in 10th grade when I finally switched over. And I decided to major in French horn in college, although I kept studying piano. I studied with my first teacher in college was a really fine teacher, and she and I got along very well. And a new teacher came on the scene, Bill Slocum. Now, played, he played in the Cleveland Symphony under George Zell, in the New York Philharmonic under Bernstein and Zubin Mehta, countless other conductors. And is this where I tell the story about?
He's the real deal in terms of being a top-notch musician, but he's also a very tough guy. So yeah, go ahead, Jerry. How did he introduce you to what it might mean to be a professional musician?
I walked into his studio. Now, this is fall semester 1972, and the Dana School of Music of Youngstown State University is, or was, a collection of old homes that people had bequeathed to the university, and or they bought them or whatever. So one house was owned by some folks whose last name was Linder. And so the Linder house was where all the brass players went. So I walked into his studio, I sat down, and Bill Slocum is, well, he has passed on, but I walked in, and there's this incredibly demonic figure sitting behind his desk, just, rubbing. He had a goatee, and he's pulling on his goatee, and he looks at me, he points at me, he says, I want you to play the horn solo from the Tchaikovsky Fifth. Now, there's a formula that goes along with that. If you can play that solo 10, 12 times in a row, then you can probably get through it in a performance. So I played it, and okay, play it slower, play it faster, I'm going to conduct you, and we went on, and 14, 15, 16 times, and I really felt like my lips were going to start bleeding, and I told him that, which was the worst thing in the world to say, and he leaned over the desk, and he just cleared his desk, and he started screaming at me. He says, I'm going to push you up against the wall and keep pushing until you crumble. And he's pounding on his desk. And at this point, I'm sitting there and I thought, oh God, am I going to maintain my bodily functions here?
So that made you want to be a musician? Because some people might say, no, I don't want any part of this. So
no, that made me want to do it even more. And his final words before we got down to business, his final words were, I'm going to make you crumble. And after you do, I'm going to show you how to put yourself back together. Then, that he didn't say, then you're going to be a horn player. He said, then we'll talk about being a professional horn player.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
And you went on to, something he did was right for you, Jerry, because you went on to have an incredible career. I mean, starting with the bands of the US Navy. And, I've always wondered, Jerry, what is the traditional role of our country's military bands? And is that role evolving?
I guess starting from the beginning, it was ceremonial. And even now, the all military bands, ceremonies, Arlington National Cemetery, Pentagon arrivals, White House arrivals, changes of command, all those sorts of things. That comes first. That's first in everybody's book. And we consider being outreach. Consider that. And we are public relations. We go on tour. The band used to tour twice a year. Now they tour. Each band tours once a year. But we're playing in high schools and colleges, and the concerts are free, of course. But it's almost impossible as soon as the word comes out that the band's going to be playing, tickets are gone. The tickets are free, but you need a ticket to get in just for crowd control and to keep the crowd from getting over the fire department safety limit.
Sure. And I've been to some of those concerts. I've been lucky enough when the military bands come to my hometown of Concord. I've been lucky enough to get those tickets early, like you said, Jerry. And Skip, to you too, as a lifelong conductor of big bands and jazz orchestras, how do you see U.S. military bands fitting into this overall big band jazz scene?
Well, it's the recurring theme, of what we've talked about a lot is just the exposure of the music to the masses. And that's one thing that the military bands exceed at, is to bring the music out so people can hear it free of charge. They go to hear them, they get that exposure. But typically in a concert band, you're going to have within that group, for the most part, a makeup of members that would be a jazz orchestra. And so they will quite often not only play the concert band material, but also might feature the smaller subset within the band of some of the, maybe a popish / jazz kind of thing or a motif, so that people can hear that. But I should say that all the top military bands are just amazing musicians. And, having worked with symphonies and concert bands as well, the toughest thing with concert bands that I've had to deal with is working with musicians that are typically focused on classically trained approach and how they do their music. And so it becomes a situation of interpretation of the music that is really critical. And great musicians can do both. It's not an easy thing to do, to be able to play jazz music with the correct interpretation, as well as the classical interpretation of the concert band classics. And these top concert bands can do that. And so they expose to larger audiences based on their tours and so forth, give the people a taste of this material.
You know, it's interesting what you just said when Jerry said that the military bands have a public relations role, public relations for the various branches of the military. I'm wondering if you think that the military bands are also sort of public relations for big band jazz. People might not think to go to a big band jazz concert, but sure, I'll go see the military band.
I think it's music in general. Live music, quality live music such as this is a rare commodity these days. It's very difficult to go see it, experience it. And the saddest thing of all is to experience it and then wonder, where do I go next to get more of it? So the military bands offer all of that. And, they're there for a mission to create awareness of what they're doing and as well as displaying this music. So, yeah, there is some cross-pollination of that, for sure.
Well, so, Jerry, one more question about military bands. When people think of them, pardon me, they might often think of John Philip Sousa and, the Stars and Stripes Forever. But you have managed to arrange other unique classics, like the Spanish piece Malagueña. And how did you come to arrange that for the Navy Concert Band? I'm guessing that's not one many listeners are familiar with.
Well, this was 2003, May. And don't ask me how or why I remember all these specific times, but I do. Our principal trombone came up to me, principal trombone player, not the trombone itself, came up to me and said, I was talking to the leader, and I told him that all the different sections have a feature, and the trombones have lossless trombones, and that's it. Would you be willing to write something for us? I said, as long as the boss gives his okay, that's fine with me. I'll do it. Well, we talked about it, and we settled on doing something of a Latin nature. And we poured through some books and, found all sorts of great songs. And so we made a list and some sound bites, and he and I went into the leader, and he looked it over and he said, okay, great. He said, these are wonderful songs. He says, how about Malagueña? And I said, well, that's really overworked. I said, like after Stan Kenton, I'm not sure who, what would be done with that. He said, right. He said, I know it's overworked, but we're going to do it one more time, aren't we?
We're going to overwork it one more time.
And I just stood there and I said, yes, we are. And so I got to work on it, and that's what happened.
Well, that's a great story, and we have a little bit of that. So let's hear some of that arrangement of Malagueña.
Okay.
Wow, Skip. When I hear that music, I picture a very sweaty conductor. There's a lot going on there. What does that bring up for you when you hear that clip?
Well, first of all, it's the artistry of the musicians and the quality of the arranging. And, the best concert bands would equally rival the greatest symphony orchestras. It's a high level of musicianship. There's a lot of interesting writing going on with the trombones and so forth, and not given any parameters saying you have to write like this or write like that, but given the freedom to write something that's very unique. Is what you heard. Now, Jerry alluded to Bill Holman's arrangement of Malagueña for the Stan Kenton Band. Same kind of thing. It's a great tune, and if it's done correctly and arranged with exciting fervor, and that the musicians are able to translate that and communicate that to a crowd. Wow, it's a very powerful statement.
Yeah, that was electrifying.
Absolutely.
That little clip we heard. And, Jerry, we've been talking about arranging and composing. What's the difference between arranging and composing?
Well, to me, arranging is when you are given a pre-written a song that's already written. Here is the song When You're Smiling. And we've heard it done a lot of different ways. And you set that song maybe with a different harmonic sequence, maybe with different rhythms, different instruments. Kind of compare that to walking into a room and you have a lot of furniture stacked right in the middle. Okay, what are we going to do with all this? Well, we can make the room look like this. Let's put the couch over here. Let's put chairs here, some tables over here, etc. And changing things around gives the room a different look, a different feel. And arranging music does much the same thing.
Composing then is your own stuff, right? Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Composition is when you come up with a melody. And the melody that you come up with, you can change the direction of it depending on which way you want it to go in the arrangement, how you want it to go. And so arranging something like Malagueña was I had to keep the flavor of it. I couldn't get too far outside of everything. I had to make sure that the audience knew that it was that song, that they knew that it was just being developed and not really changing the song, really. But a composition, you can take your melody and let it assume its own direction.
Well, out of all the arranging you've done, and you've done so much, Jerry, do you have any favorites? For example, It's All Right With Me, others. What are some favorites?
That is definitely one of my favorites.
Really?
Without question. There is, I did actually another concert band arrangement of 3 Italian songs that featured a euphonium soloist. That was one of my favorites. And oh gosh, I don't even remember how long ago it was, but Skip asked me if I would do a concert of Bing Crosby's music. We had 6 horns and 4 rhythm. And I think that was one of my favorite ventures. That was quite I learned a whole lot doing that, and I felt like I'd just written a term paper for a doctoral thesis after I did that. That was a huge undertaking.
Well, yeah. Sorry, Jerry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm finished.
Well, since you said It's All Right With Me was one of your favorites, and I'm sure you have many because you've done so many, let's just hear a little bit of It's All Right With Me. So many arrangements, so little time to talk about them, Skip. But Jerry has done so much arranging for you over the years. What does he bring to the table in terms of his style?
Well-
and how does that come out?
Well, I mean, what you heard on the first recording was a concert band. Clearly, what we just heard was a big band, and there's a huge difference in the way writing is approached for the two different mediums. You know, the second one was a straight-ahead upswing, kind of a big band thing, which was marvelous. And then the earlier one was a concert band. And not, excuse me, not to digress too much, but last episode we talked about the Rhapsody in Blue, and that's a classic case of composing and arranging. George Gershwin at that time, in 1924, was not an arranger. He had no idea, and admittedly so, but he was a marvelous composer, having done all kinds of music for the theater and so forth. So the Rhapsody in Blue was his composition, but Freddie Graffet was the arranger. So in the original presentation of that work, George Gershwin was the composer, Freddie Graffet was the arranger. Subsequently, Gershwin learned how to become a great arranger, and he went on to great things. But they're two different things, and something that two different people can collaborate on to make. When it comes to Jerry has the ability to do both, which is very unique. So, usually you might see, excuse me, a composer and an arranger. Jerry can do it all. And we've worked both with the concert bands as well as the small groups that Jerry mentioned and the big bands, everything under the sun, and original compositions, arrangements, and so forth. One year, we were working with a concert band for a holiday pop show, and it was especially challenging because we wanted to do something different, as we normally try to do. But the challenging part was the fact that we had asked Jerry to orchestrate this piece for concert band, full chorus. It was about a 100-piece chorus, full concert band. In addition to that, we wanted narration. We wanted solo bagpipes, which is another story altogether. Solo violin, solo voice with a choir, as I mentioned, in the full. So that was a huge undertaking. The only thing that we didn't have at that point was a full body of strings, but we did have a solo violinist. And what we were trying to do with this concept, I said, we want to create a Christmas feel, sort of an Irish or English Christmas feel. And ultimately he developed this work, and it was called Christmas Eve on the Isles. And I mean, it just incorporated so much. Any other composer, arranger would have looked at me like I had 5 heads and said, where's the exit door? I want to go to the. I'm not going to do that. And Jerry was like, that sounds great, So that says a lot about Jerry. But many weeks later, and many trees later, after all the paper and scores, we did it. And, we never have the luxury of a gazillion rehearsals to pull things together. We literally have a 3-hour rehearsal and a performance with the top professional folks. And so, that's the expectation. So to pull all that together with a 100-piece choir was a challenge.
Yeah.
But we got through it. And so that was an amazing piece. One of the most, I think, difficult, prolific pieces that we've done with the concert band, but yet it involved so many different moving parts.
Right. Wow. A narrator, yours truly.
Yes,
also
you did. And bagpipes,
choir,
violin,
bagpipes.
choir.
That's great.
I couldn't really think of what else we could throw in there. And had harp, solo harp. I mean, it was just...
the kitchen sink.
And then some, right.
Let's hear a little bit of that.
Sure.
From an age when the celebration of Christmas was banned to a time witnessing the foundation of beloved carols of today, Christian beliefs, joys, and promise of salvation were handed down through generations in word and song. Oh my gosh. I love that story
That was
that you just told.
That was the kitchen sink right there.
Jerry, how about you? What arrangements stand out for you among the countless numbers that you've created?
Oh, heavens. Well, what Skip said initially about the relationship between the music director and the arranger slash composer is very important. He never really, Skip never really said, as he stated, he never really said, "Look, here's what I want you to do. This is what I want." He said he would always say, "Here's the mood we're trying to create. Here's how I want the people in the audience to feel." And so, okay, go ahead. It's all yours. And so I would, take a couple of weeks to cook and just think about all of it, let it sift down, and then start working on it. And I would send him snippets whenever something was finished or after I gotten to a certain point. And, he would say, "Yes, that's exactly what I want," or "Can we move this way a little more?" Yes, absolutely. And
Well, you've heard Jerry when he's writing for the Wind Symphony or the jazz orchestra, but also a lot of what we do is we do historical research on different eras, and one thing that I think we both got a lot of fun from was when we worked on the Bing Crosby salute.
oh yes,
Right.
And part of that was the fact that it was historical. We had to go back to listen to these old 78s, recreate some of the material that was almost 100 years old when Crosby first got started. And the extra challenge with that was the fact that he was writing it for a 10-piece band. It was a much smaller orchestra and solo vocal. So I think that was a major accomplishment, recreating that material with that ensemble to do a tribute to an icon like Crosby.
Yeah.
And so that ranks up there with one of my favorite things as well. I think
Well,
Jerry too.
And it's quite beautiful. And we actually have a video clip of it. So let's
Oh,
watch that
good.
now. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm no billionaire, but I'm not the type to care, because I've got a pocket full of dreams. It's my universe, even with an empty purse, because I've got a pocket full of dreams. If I say I love you, I want you to know it's not just because there's moonlight, although moonlight becomes you. So I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. Jerry Ascione. And thanks for the memory, and strictly on the new. Darling, how are you? How are all those little dreams that never did come true? Awfully glad I met you, Jerry O, and toodaloo. And thank you so much.
Okay, I kind of feel like clapping myself now. And we should say that was CJ Poole singing. Jerry, just to wrap things up here, we talked about all the things that you've done, playing and arranging and composing and conducting. At the Capitol Jazz Orchestra's last Christmas concert, where we worked together, you arranged some pieces, which I narrated, and you conducted one. But you didn't play the piano this time, and I wonder why that was, Jerry.
Well, this goes back a ways, actually. In 2009, I had some major nerve damage in my neck, and the only thing that they could do to kind of alleviate some of the pain and some of the loss of movement was to put in an artificial disc, and which really cleared up like 96% of the problem, as my doctor told me it would. But the last 4% may or may not ever come back, and it didn't. So I really don't have the fine motor control in my left hand that I used to. Because when you're practicing, you practice incessantly to have both hands being able to do anything.
Right.
And in the past 3 or 4 years, it just started getting worse.
Well, what's that been like for you, Jerry? I mean, that's a huge part of your life. It's part of that whole.
Had this happened 30 years ago, I'd have been in serious trouble. My whole career could have gone right down the drain. But but it happened after I retired, and I was able to work around the problem for a good while. I would have pianists from the audience come up and say, why are you using those kinds of fingerings in your left hand? Wouldn't it be easier to do this? Yes, it would. If I had full control of my left hand, it would be easier.
I
but
see.
I don't.
You were accommodating, right?
Yeah, I had to work around it. The old joke, Doc, it hurts when I go like this. Well, don't go like that.
Yeah.
So
Easier said than done. But I think it speaks to you also, Jerry, as a person and as a musician that, okay, the piano isn't working right now, but you are arranging, you are composing, you are conducting, you are, it's part of that process of constant reinvention, isn't it?
It is. And I really never believed in anything like that. I thought that if you were, if I was a pianist, a performer, well, that was it. That's all I would do. But I kept thinking of Bill Slocum. I'll show you how to put yourself back together.
There you go.
And in later years, I had no idea how right he was. And in fact, I just finished up a piece for a concert, actually wind ensemble piece for the Dana School of Music. It's a legacy concert. The director of bands passed away 2 or 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, actually. And they've started a legacy concert series for him. And I was quite honored that they asked me to write something in his honor, and I will go up next month to guest conduct it. But there's still, I don't want to be the person on stage that everyone else looks at and says, gee, you should have heard him 15 years ago before all this started happening.
Right, you quit while you're ahead. Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that story, and I love that you tied it back to good old Bill Slocum. You put yourself back together.
Major influence.
Well, and just one or two last questions. Preview time. Skip, what's next on your musical calendar? I know it's very full.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we're doing with the New Hampshire Jazz Orchestra that's coming up on April 26th, we have a wonderful show. It's called Welcome to the Club. It's going to feature CJ singing vocals from various crooners over the years, Sinatra, Bobby Darin, Bing Crosby, and so forth. I think that's going to be wonderful. That's coming up in April. And May, we have another dance event, B&H Stage. And then June, we're doing a tribute to Duke Ellington. It's called Echoes of Ellington. That's coming up on June 14th. So there's a lot of things happening.
That's very exciting. Jerry, how about you? What are you working on right now, especially for CP Music Productions?
Well, Skip and I are going to be in touch with each other very soon to decide what needs to be written for the holiday concert. I mean, that's my concert. If the Christmas season starts when I get to come up to Concord, do the concert, and hopefully please nobody attack me for this. If there's 1.5 feet of snow on the ground and it's 15 degrees, I'm happy.
As long as you get here before the snowstorm,
and
we're happy too.
We see that. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but so much planning goes into it. We talk about behind the scenes and so forth. And for the most part, the public pays the ticket price, shows up, sees the show, and loves it, and goes home. But there are literally months of planning and getting the music together and understanding what direction the concert's going to go. And so Jerry and I are back and forth on the phone a lot. And ultimately, we do this one performance of the Holiday Pops, and it's wonderful. And then we're back at the drawing board a few months later.
Right.
So that's where we're at right now, the very beginning of what will be happening in December.
Well, we could talk a lot more. I very much appreciate both of you being here. It's just been great. I love hearing all those selections. Skip, thank you. It's always nice to talk to you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
That's Clayton Skip Poole, music director and conductor of CP Music Productions. And Jerry Ascione, I will see you in December when you're here for the holiday concert. But for now, thank you so much.
And thank you, Laura, and thank you, Skip. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
That's Jerry Ascione, musician, composer, conductor, arranger, and educator, whose work has been performed around the country, even around the world, including with CP Music Productions. Well, next time on Big Band Backstage, our guest will be Brian Davis, current lead trumpet chair with the Duke Ellington Orchestra and the 8-Bit Big Band, and among other subjects, we'll be discussing, as Skip mentioned, his upcoming guest performance with the New Hampshire Jazz Orchestra featuring the music of Duke Ellington. I can't wait for that one. To learn more about CP Music Productions, their upcoming performances, and big band music in general, sign up for their newsletter at cplivemusic.com. Again, that's cplivemusic.com. They're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube with the handle CP Live Music Official. This podcast can be found on their YouTube channel and also on Spotify. The theme for Big Band Backstage was written by Jerry Ascione, and many, many thanks to DHB Studios for producing this podcast. And that's it for today. I'm Laura Canoy. Please join us next time for Big Band Backstage.